Om Namo Bhagavate. Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Today we'll hear from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, Text 39. Deva Ruchu Namama
Namama
Te
Te
Deva Deva
Deva
Padaravindam
Tadaravindam
Namamate Deva Padaravindam
Namate Deva Padaravindam
Prapanna.
Prapanna
Okay, let's see how these are divided. Tapa
Tapa
Upashama
Upashama
Atapatram
Atapatram
Prapannataposha Matapatra. Okay, try it again. Prapannatapo Pashamatapatram
Pramanatapo Pashamatapatram
Yad
Yat
Mula
Mula
Keta
Keta
Yatayo
Yatayo
Jasoru
Rishasoru
Yanmula Keta Yatayom Jasoru
Yanmula Keta Yatayo Rishasoru
Samsara
Samsara
Dukham
Dukam
Bahir
Bahir
Utchipanti
Bukshikpanti
Samsara Dukham Bahiru Utchipanti
Samsara Dukam Bahir Bukshikpanti
Namamate Deva Padaravindam
Namamate Deva Padaravindam
Prapannatapo Pashamatapatram
Ramanatapo Shamanatapatram
Yanmulaketa Yatayom Jasoru
Yanmulaketa Yatayo Rishoru
Samsara Dukham Bahiru Utchipanti
Samsara Dukam Bahir Bukshikpanti
Namamate Deva Padaravindam
Namamate Deva Padaravindam
Prapannatapo Pashamatapatram
Prapanatapo Pashamatapatram
Yanmulaketa Yatayom Jasoru
Yanmulaketa Yatayo Rishoru
Samsara Dukham Bahiru Chipanti.
Samsara Dukam Bahir Bukshikpanti
Others, please.
Namamite Deva Padaravindam
Namamate Deva Padaravindam
Prapanatapo Tapo Pashamatapatram
Prapannatapo Pashamatapatram
Yanmulaketa Yatayo Rishasoru
Yanmulaketa Yatayom Jasoru
Samsara Dukam Bahir Bukshikpanti
Samsara Dukham Bahiru Chipanti
Namate Deva Padaravindam
Namamate Deva Padaravindam Prapanatapo Pasamatmatpatram
Yanmulaketa Yatayo Niyostoru
Yanmulaketa Yatayo Soru
Samsara Dukam Bahir Uksikati
Samsara Dukam Bahir Utchipanti
Synonyms. Deva Uchu,
Deva Uchu
the demigods,
the
said.
demigods said
Namama,
Namama
we offer our respectful obeisances.
we offer our respectful obeisances
Te,
Te
your.
Your
Deva,
Deva
O Lord.
O Lord
Pada Aravindam,
Padaravindam
lotus feet.
Lucy
Prapanna,
Prapanam
surrendered.
surrendered
Tapa,
Tapa,
distress.
distress.
Upashama,
Upashama,
suppresses.
suppresses.
Atapatram,
Atapatram,
umbrella.
umbrella.
Yat mulaketa,
Yadmulaketa,
shelter of the lotus feet.
shelter of the lotus feet.
Yataya,
Yataya,
great sages.
great sages.
Anjasa,
Anjasa,
totally.
totally.
Guru,
Guru,
great.
great.
Samsara dukham,
Samsara dukkham,
miseries of material existence.
miseries of material existence.
Bahi,
Bahi,
out.
out.
Uchipanti,
Uchipanti,
forcibly throw.
forcibly throw.
Translation: the demigod said, O Lord, your lotus feet are like an umbrella for the surrendered souls, protecting them from all the miseries of material existence. All the sages under that shelter throw off all material miseries. We therefore offer our respectful obeisances unto your lotus feet. Responsively, please. The demigod said,
The demigod said,
O Lord,
O Lord,
your lotus feet
your lotus feet
are like an umbrella for the surrendered souls,
are like an umbrella for surrendered souls,
protecting them from all the miseries
protecting them from all the miseries
of material existence.
of material existence.
All the sages under that shelter
All the sages under that shelter
throw off all material miseries.
throw off all material miseries.
We therefore offer our respectful obeisances
We therefore offer our respectful obeisances
unto your lotus feet.
unto your lotus feet.
Srila Prabhupada's purport. There are many sages and saints who engage in trying to conquer rebirth and all other material miseries. Better get that, boss.
Who's boss?
I was just going to say, the question arises, who is the boss here?
Krishna's the boss. Or that boss is the boss.
Yeah.
It's bossy.
Boss is the boss.
All right, start again.
Sorry.
Boss. There are many sages and saints who engage in trying to conquer rebirth and all other material miseries. But of all of them, those who take shelter under the lotus feet of the Lord can completely throw off all such miseries without difficulty. Others, who are engaged in transcendental activities in different ways, cannot do so. For them, it is very difficult. They may artificially think of becoming liberated without accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, but that is not possible. One is sure to fall again to material existence from such false liberation, even though one may have undergone severe penances and austerities. This is the opinion of the demigods, who are not only well versed in Vedic knowledge, but are also seers of the past, present, and future. The opinions of the demigods are valuable because the demigods are authorized to hold positions in the affairs of universal management. They are appointed by the Lord as his confidential servants. Om Ajnanatimirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Mukhaṁ karoti vachalam bhangum vangahayate girim jatkripatamam vande Shri Gurun Dinataram Shri Chaitanya Mano Ishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadama Dadati Swapadantikam Pancha Kalpatarvishta Kripasantho Yevachan Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namamate deva padarvindam prapannatapo pasamatapatram yanmulaketa yatayonjasoru samsaradhukam bahir jipanti. The demigod said, O Lord, your lotus feet are like an umbrella for the surrendered souls, protecting them from all the miseries of material existence. All the sages under that shelter throw off the material miseries. We therefore offer our respectful obeisances unto your lotus feet. So this verse in Srila Prabhupada's purport bring to mind another verse spoken by the demigods. Ring a bell for anybody? I can help.
Yay.
Because I looked it up. This is from chapter 2 of the second canto. This is the prayers by the demigods to Lord Krishna while he is still in the womb. And this is the 32nd verse. You'll recognize it most likely. Yen yer vindaksha vimuktamani nastvayas bhavara vishukta buddhaya aruha patrena param padam tata patantyato nadrita yushmaram graya. So there's a little square brackets, not an interpolation, but a preface to this verse. Someone may say that aside from devotees who always seek shelter at the Lord's lotus feet, hear an echo there? There are those who are not devotees, but who have accepted different processes for accepting salvation. What happens to them? In answer to this question, Lord Brahma and the other demigods said, O lotus-eyed Lord, although non-devotees who accept severe austerities and penances to achieve the highest position may think themselves liberated, their intelligence is impure. They fall down from their position of imagined superiority because they have no regard for your lotus feet. Take a look at the purport to this verse because it's terribly significant. But this verse makes the same point that Prabhupada makes in his purport to this verse. So we've got the demigod's brain here. Your lotus feet are like an umbrella for those who are surrendered souls, protecting them from the materials of all the miseries of material existence. And in the 10th canto verse, we have a little bit more. Those who won't take shelter at your lotus feet, they only imagine themselves to be liberated. Their intelligence is contaminated. What's it contaminated by? Self-interest. Even though they're looking for liberation, that's still a selfish desire. This is a post I pound whenever I get a chance, utilizing the Stuna Nikanana Nyaya suggested by Srila Jiva Goswami in his Paramatma Sandarbha, the logic of pounding a post. You want a fence post to be set nicely in the ground, first of all you got to dig the post hole. And back when I was a kid, digging post holes for fences and other things, I remember I had to do that to plant. What did we plant out in front of our house in Virginia? Boxwood, I guess. Boxwood hedge. I had to plant one every, I don't know, 1.5 feet or something. I had to make the hole with the post hole digger. And it wasn't a gasoline powered screw thing. It was a thing where you had to go with, it's like 2 shovels hinged together, and you put it in wide, and then you close it up and pull the dirt in. You have to like pound it in to loosen the dirt up to make the hole. And then you pound the post in as hard as you can. Nowadays we have those big heavy things that you put on top, and it just kind of slides over the post and you lift it up and pound, 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 until it gets set firmly in. It's got to be firm, otherwise, when you put up the wire, it's going to be too easy for the cows to get out. All they got to do is knock over the fence. Cows are pretty smart. I've seen cows undo gate latches. Easy for them to figure out. They watch us do it a few times, and they just think, well, I don't have those tentacle things, you know, one of those weird things that they've got, you know, at the end of their legs. But I have a nose, and I know it'll get in there. I've seen, I mean, there were just some cows we couldn't leave in certain areas because we'd end up having to go chasing down the road after them.
Sleeping cows.
So, and I don't think there were, at Avdaria, I don't think we had cattle grates anywhere on the road, so they could just go as hard as they wanted. Anyway, so, you know, these people are just imagining that they're liberated because their consciousness is contaminated by this self-interest. This is the last word in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna tells Arjuna, Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. Give up all conventional senses of dharma. All the stuff that we've been talking about over the last 600 odd verses. Forget it. Just take shelter of me exclusively. Just me. And if there's some discrepancy incurred in doing, but you know, by your doing so, some neglect of some so-called duty or something like that, no worries. I've got you covered. I've got your back. I'll personally take care of it. And he can make that assertion because, well, he's Krishna. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's the last word in the Bhagavad Gita, and that's where we pick up the next step after that at the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam, some devotees compare it to like a theological sequel to the Bhagavad Gita. So the Gita leaves off Sarvadharma parityajya. Parityajya, completely reject them. Throw them away. Just throw them away. And the Bhagavatam picks up, okay, now for those who've completely rejected kaitava dharma, prauchitam is the same thing as parityajya, completely give up. For those who've already completely given those things up, here's an interesting topic for discussion. Not going to make any sense to those who haven't. It's just going to go right over their heads. But for those who've seen through all the promises of dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, and therefore just walked away from them, turned their back on them, walked away from them, just as Parikshit Maharaj walked away from his responsibilities as king, his palace, his wealth, his family, everything. And just as Shukadeva Goswami, once he finally came out, took one look around and thought, oh my God, it's like household life everywhere here. And just took off for the woods, didn't bother for any with any reformatory processes, didn't pick up his uniform, nothing, just off to the forest, completely oblivious, completely immersed in his Atma Ananda. So, so for those who walked away from kaitava dharma, cheating religion, the aspiration for virtue, for material progress, for the pleasure you get from making material progress, and from the liberation you seek after realizing it's all a big scam. those who are they don't have anything to do with those things. Here's something to talk about. So here the demigods are saying that those who've taken shelter of your lotus feet, they completely and throw off all the material miseries. Doesn't have anything to do with them. They're just free. So this is a big word here, aprapanna, in this verse. Adadavindam, what an umbrella. This is an umbrella that naturally sheds water, right? You see the pictures like, I have this picture of an open lotus blossom, red lotus blossom, and then one is a bud, and then you got the leaves, and apparently it has just recently rained when this picture was taken, and you've got light coming behind the petals. It's just a really cool picture, very peaceful. But you see water beaded up not just on the lotus leaves, but on the petals as well. Just enhances the beauty. It's just such an amazing picture. So water beads up like that. So Krishna's lotus feet are like that. They can protect us from all kinds of miseries. I have a couple of umbrella stories. You want to hear the umbrella stories? These are from August of 1970 when Srila Prabhupada visited here, just for a day. He was just here overnight. So we just made a Vyasa sun, and I think the women probably finished upholstering it maybe 15 minutes before Prabhupada arrived.
Yes.
Which we took as one of those signals as this is clearly transcendental, because there's no way in the world we could have pulled this stuff off. And as we did back then, we rigged up an umbrella. You know, you could get a fairly decent umbrella at Long's or wherever. And I was going to say Liberty House. Shows how much I've been in department stores lately. Macy's. So you get a halfway decent umbrella, and then we would cover the inside with gold lame, and the outside with red velvet, and there'd be these kind of like pearly bead things along the seams, and this gold fringe around. I mean, they were just goofy as anything, but we were trying to make a nice umbrella for Srila Prabhupada, because you hold an umbrella over a respectable person's head, you know, as they're moving, especially outside. But you know, I was holding this umbrella over Srila Prabhupada's head as we were leaving the airport, going through the Honolulu International Airport inside, out to his car. Anybody, not Kusha, willing to hazard a guess as to what kind of car we had waiting for Srila Prabhupada at the curb?
Rolls Royce.
Exactly. It was a white Rolls Royce convertible. It belonged. We've had forever trouble with the Waikiki Business Association. Forever. You know, we've harassed them and they've harassed us for over 50 years now. Ever since we started doing some kirtan in Waikiki. And but there were exceptions. One exception was the Hawaiian Wax Museum, which was like 1 or 2 doors down from the entrance to the International Marketplace, which resembled in no way the International Marketplace today. In no way. I mean, it was a bunch of funky little, what do you call them, kiosks and wagons and stuff mostly. A few stores around the edge, I guess. And you know, people selling local stuff, got crazy shirts. And,
It's the banyan tree was the
the
most.
banyan tree dominated the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's an amazing banyan tree, amazing banyan tree.
And J. Aku had Kupuli at a radio station in the tree.
Coconut Wireless would broadcast from that banyan tree at the International Market. Anyway, so the Waikiki Wax Museum was just a couple doors down, and that guy let us use his bathroom. We could walk in. We could just walk into the Hawaiian Wax Museum, and go use the bathroom anytime. There are a couple of the hotels that didn't mind too. I think the one on the Surf Rider maybe. But this guy was just really cool. And when Srila Prabhupada arrived, he offered us the use of his car to take Srila Prabhupada to his hotel room in Waikiki. And it was a white Rolls-Royce convertible. Of course, then the next ride was in Gursundar's pickup truck from Waikiki to the temple, of which Gursundar was unbearably proud. A new white Ford pickup truck. So I'm carrying this umbrella over Srila Prabhupada's head as we're walking through the airport. You know, going along. And I guess at one point, probably the fringe or something catches Srila Prabhupada's eyes, and he looks up at the umbrella and he looks back at me and gives me like this big grin, like, okay, that's cute. It was completely encouraging, you know. He kind of gave me a little head waggle and like, that's cool. And so I thought, okay, so this is weird, but he thinks it's okay, so I'm going to keep holding this umbrella.
The umbrella man.
Later in the day, in the evening, when Srila Prabhupada came to the temple, and the temple was packed to way overflowing. Probably had a couple, 300 people at that temple. It could accommodate maybe 60 or something, including the entire Krishna Yoga community and their leader, a young fellow named Sai. Actually, he sat right behind me. And the future U.S. representative from Hawaii and governor of Hawaii, Neil Abercrombie, was also there that night. So we had the Vyasasana, we got the upholstery finished a few minutes before Srila Prabhupada actually arrived, and but we didn't have an umbrella over it like you do. So one of the brahmacharis, and I'll let Kusha see if she can remember or guess who, just probably about who you'd expect. No.
Tiridas Malapatra.
It was Govardhan. The Vyasasana was on a bay window shelf at the opposite end of the front room from where we had the altar, the temple room from where we had the altar. And because we didn't have an umbrella over the Vyasasana, Govardhan, this one brahmachari, Govardhan, took the umbrella and he kneeled on that shelf right next to the Vyasasana and held it over Srila Prabhupada's head for quite a while. And after a while, Prabhupada looked up at the umbrella. No, he looked at Govardhan, he looked up at the umbrella, and he looked back at Govardhan and smiled and he said, "It's all right, I don't think it will rain in here."
Wow.
So, therefore, he gave Govardhan permission to find a more comfortable spot. So, the umbrella protects us. It's there to protect us from the sun or the rain. Just like here in Hawaii, it's like almost 60 years later, and I still see old Chinese ladies. It's not the same old Chinese ladies, it's their granddaughters now, walking around, down Nu'uanu Avenue or down Vineyard or around downtown with with an umbrella as a parasol, protecting them from the sun. They got those same visor hats that they were wearing when I came in 1967, and they got the umbrella and the long sleeve shirt so their skin doesn't get messed up like some folks by the sun. So umbrellas, they afford this serious protection. And actually taking shelter of Krishna's lotus feet affords us real liberation, affords us real freedom.
Jai Shri Bhagawatam ki.
As Srila Prabhupada points out, engaging in other sorts of spiritual or spiritual-ish activities, no matter how cool you think you are, how liberated you think you are, don't really do that. It gives you a sense of being liberated. Nope. Oh, it was 23. Gosh, I was right there. Grabbing these now. Missed it. No, somehow or other Krishna's protecting us from me having to try to read the purport. But, you know, if we read that purport to that verse, or we read Srila Prabhupada's explanation of that verse in chapter 2 of the Krishna book, it shows us quite clearly how there is no means for attaining actual liberation from which there is no falling, except by taking shelter of the Lord's lotus feet. And what we mean by taking shelter of the Lord's lotus feet is taking shelter of His service. So in today's verse, this word prapanna is such a huge word. Earlier this morning, I gave a class on this month. I'm giving a short series on the four Vaishnava Sampradayas. So today I talked about the Kumara Sampradaya, the Nimarka Sampradaya. And part of their sadhana, they have this like 5 items of sadhana. And one is sampatti, which is the same thing as prapanna or sharanagati, prapatti. There's several different words that are used. And they're really, in the other Vaishnava Sampradayas, they're, like in the Sri Sampradaya, that's their whole sadhana, taking shelter of the Lord. Pushti Marg, you know, one of their mantras, Sri Krishna Saranam Mama. They'll sing that in Kirtan even. Sri Krishna Saranam, I take shelter, complete shelter of Krishna. He is he's my absolute shelter. And what we mean by taking shelter of the lotus feet is serving. It's not just, it's like we talk about taking the dust from the lotus feet of the pure devotee. What does that mean? One of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers once commented, you know, the devotees would come and they would want to touch his feet. And he said, oh, if that's what you think it means to take the dust of the Guru's lotus feet, better think again. There's a lot more to it than that. It's actually surrendering, actually taking shelter of the service. And I noted that with each of the sampradayas, there are 2 things that Lord Chaitanya took into his philosophy and practice. And from the Sri Sampradaya, one of the things, I think it was Sharanapati, and it was service to the devotees that he took from the Sri Sampradaya. And sometimes we talk about, we talk about our religion as being Vaishnavism. But what does Vaishnavism really mean? It means we worship the Vaishnavas. So we find, ways to serve the Vaishnavas, and best without fanfare. It's like I find that there's someone around here who helps me with little things that are kind of things that I've neglected or missed for a few minutes or something like that, and I turn around and it's done. Or who was it? Lokanath Goswami was approached by Narottam Das Thakur for surrender. And Lokanath, I'm not interested in taking disciples. But after a while, he found that the place where he went in the morning to relieve himself, he'd come back and had been cleaned. And he thought, oh, that's weird. Somebody's cleaning up after me. Somebody's doing some service for me. And he caught Narottam cleaning up after him one day. And Narottam was eventually able to convince Lokanath Goswami to accept him as his disciple. Why? Because he had taken shelter of his lotus feet by service, by menial service. Another example is Ishwar Puri. Ishwar Puri, Madhavendra Puri. Madhavendra, and we have a stark contrast, right, between these two godbrothers, Madhavendra Puri and Ramchandra Puri. I'm so tired I can't think straight right now. Ramchandra Puri, you know, when Madhavendra Puri was ill, Ramchandra Puri, he was, you know, kind of lamenting, oh Krishna, you know, and Ramchandra Puri was giving him instruction. He says, you're a great sadhu. What business do you have lamenting? And he was criticizing his guru. Actually, what he was lamenting was his separation from Krishna, which is perfect. It's the whole enchilada right there, and all the samosas and the Shrikand as well. But Ishwar Puri was cleaning up after Madhavendra Puri, as he was old and invalid, doing the most menial things. And so he was blessed. What was his blessing? Got the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a disciple. There you go. I mean, if you want to accept disciples, there's somebody who's, you know, who would be worth accepting. As difficult as it has to be. Can you imagine something like that approaching you? So when we talk about taking shelter of the Lord's lotus feet, when we talk about surrendering, this is a powerful practice. It's one of the 64 angas of sadhana bhakti. And Lord Chaitanya says, and probably said this the other day, Lord Chaitanya says in Antya Lila of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, this is Sanatana Goswami, that at the time of initiation, as the devotee surrenders, Atma Samarpana, and that surrendering also includes, you know, we know the 6 angas of Sharanagati, accepting things that are favorable for the culture of bhakti, neglecting things that are unfavorable, cultivating the conviction that Krishna will protect us in all circumstances, and being completely dependent on Krishna's mercy for everything, even for our maintenance, and then giving up all self-interest. Atma Nikshepa or Atma Nivedana. Nikshepa also has this, well, we saw the word here, where'd it go? Utkshipanti, it's the same word. Nikshepa has the same root. Utkshipanti, forcibly throwing. So Atma Nikshepa means also throwing away, completely throwing away any sense of self-interest. So, and that's why at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, although they're not explicitly stated, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha Vancha, the desire for these things is rejected as cheating religion, because it's about me. And real religion is about you. It's about Krishna. It's about what service can I do for you. Sudama Vipra, his wife asked him to go kind of like cash in on his friendship with Krishna. He was so embarrassed to do that. He wasn't so much embarrassed about being poor. or having a lousy offering, although he was a little embarrassed about that, but he was mostly embarrassed about the idea of going to ask Krishna for something. It was alien to him. And he couldn't do it in the end. He couldn't even do it. But when he got home, boom, his little hut had turned into a palace. And his wife, instead of wearing rags, was, dressed to the nines, as we say, or we used to say, I guess, I don't know. So, this is what it means to take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. And here the demigods are advocating for that. I guess that's my signal. Are there any comments, reflections, questions? Lines?
The umbrella man, awesome.
Just one. They're probably a lot better umbrella men.
Me-
Alexander,
Hare
of course.
Krishna. Yeah, so like when you take shelter of Krishna, I mean, devotees still face so many obstacles, and apparent, material miseries and problems. I mean, we're still in this burning forest fire of material existence. So, and not everybody who makes offerings to Krishna gets their hut converted into a mansion. So how is it that taking shelter of Krishna mitigates material existence? It's still very, for most devotees, it is very challenging and difficult.
Yeah, and Krishna explains it throughout the Bhagavatam especially. There's one verse in the 8th chapter of the 10th canto where Krishna says that, and he's answering a question just like that. He says, well, if someone's very dear to me, I take away all the stuff that gets in the way of his surrendering to me. I take everything away. And then, because he's a bum, all his followers, his admirers, even his family members, they just reject him. They think, ooh, we thought we were going to get something out of Grandpa, but all of a sudden, the guy's penniless. So Krishna says, if I'm particularly attached to someone, I take away everything so that they've got nothing but me. And the devotees who have cultivated this vision, they see it like that. They see these things as blessings. I mean, one thing we see in the story of the Brahmana of Avanti in the 11th canto is this is a story of forbearance. I mean, this is not a nice guy. He was a really rich Brahmin guy, all kinds of money coming in from everywhere. But he was so stingy, so tight. He wouldn't even spend money on his own sense gratification. And you can imagine how his family and friends came to resent him. They go out, he never offers to cover for the meal or whatever it is, He's always waiting for somebody. I mean, he won't spend a penny on anything. And so the resentment grows so strong that everybody starts like embezzling. Everybody starts ripping him off, and eventually he's bleeding. His wealth is bleeding so badly that all of a sudden he's left with nothing. And all his dreams for his nice, comfortable future, like the bumper sticker on the back of the RVs you see on the mainland, we're spending our children's inheritance. You got this $180,000 Mercedes-Benz RV or something like that, or one of those big cabin cruiser things that you see them going into the resort places, and they gotta like back up to make that turn to get up. What was that? Bill's something or other road out in North Carolina in the mountains, and And they got the bumper sticker on the back, we're spending our children's inheritance. So he's left with nothing. But what does he do with that? He doesn't commit suicide. He realizes, man, that was just a really dumb plan after all. And so he takes sannyas. And of course, everybody takes that very seriously. Oh, your holiness, you know. No, they think this guy's a jerk. You know, he's treated us like dirt. I mean, ignored us, made fun of us when we asked for anything at all. Imagine his kids, they want to rip him off. So, you know, everybody sees him, you know, sitting with his begging bowl and his danda, doing his meditation, chanting his mantras. And they come along, you know, and they spit on him and they call him names. They urinate in his begging bowl on him and steal his tree danda away. Anybody who thinks that the idea of a tree danda is something made up recently should read that verse in Bhagawatam where it's described that he carried his tree veni, 3 rods tied together. Tree danda, he was a tree dandi sannyasi. So, and he just thought, cool, that's cool. I don't have to have anything to do with any of this. He had so completely detached himself from that. So these things happen, but the Vedas, the Vedic scriptures assure us that at least to the extent that we're surrendered, we don't suffer and enjoy because of karma. Just as we see in that verse, that Lord Chaitanya says that at the time of initiation, at least to the extent the devotee is surrendered, when he's engaged in Atma-nivedana, at least to the degree that he's done so, Krishna accepts his body as being, that devotee's body as being as good as his own. Atma-sam, that's the word, that's the phrase that's used to describe how Krishna sees our sadhaka deha. He sees that body as being as good as his own. And I mentioned the other day, or was it yesterday or tomorrow, I don't remember now. Gave class last night. I didn't give class yesterday morning, thank you. Last night, 2 this morning, 1 this afternoon. Anyway, but in 2 out of 3 verses, Krishnadas Kaviraj has Lord Chaitanya describing the devotee's sadhaka deha as chidanandamoy, being completely constituted of spiritual substance. Kind of like the residents of Vaikuntha. You know, when Narada Muni, at the very beginning of the 7th canto, when Narada Muni tells King Yudhishthira, you know those 2 cousins of yours, Dantavakra, Shishupal, those guys? They used to live in Vaikuntha. Narada Muni likes to stir things up. So he's kind of setting Yudhishthira up so that he can tell him, so that Shukadeva, you know, actually Shukadeva is kind of setting up, telling the story of Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad and Lord Nrsimhadev. So he's got to tell, you know, where does Hiranyakashipu come from? So he says, you know, those 2 brothers, those 2 cousins of yours, those dudes used to live in Vaikuntha. And King Yudhishthira says, you know, it's the equivalent of WTH, what that, you know. That's, and he says, what the word he uses is impossible. He says, that is simply not possible. Because their bodies are made of pure spiritual, all the residents there, their bodies are made of pure spiritual substance, and there's no influence of the external energy. It doesn't exist there. How is that possible? And so Narada Muni says, well, there is occasionally a special instance, just to effect some lila, so the Lord can carry out some pastimes, that where someone might come from the spiritual world. But he says, basically, you know, you're right. So we have, you know, so this chidanandamoy, this is pure, being constituted of pure spiritual substance. We should see that. You know, this is what Lord Chaitanya told Sanatana. He says, oh, you want to get rid of that body because it's got sores on it and you think you're going to contaminate people by getting near them. This is not your body anymore, because you've given it to me. And guess what? I've got plenty of stuffs I want you to do with that body, bro. Plenty. So don't even think about what you're thinking about. And then, much to Sanatan's delight and horror at the same time, threw those big long arms around him and pulled him to his breast in an tight embrace, and the sores all cleared up. And then Sanatan went back to Vrindavan and did so much important service. The leader of the Goswamis in Vrindavan, the leader of all the Vaishnavas in Brajamandala. He was like everybody's big brother, everybody's uncle, everybody's counselor. He would even help them deal with their domestic problems. You can imagine Das and Dasi, they're going at it in the evenings, and he has a little too much sweet rice after dinner, and they start going at it in the evenings, and Sanatan Goswami would sit down with them and try to straighten things out. Or the kid's going wrong, not chanting his 64 rounds a day or something like that. Sanatan Goswami will take care of it. So Chidanandamoy. And so the scriptures say the devotees don't suffer or enjoy because of karma. They suffer and enjoy because of bhakti. And the enjoyment, it's a happiness that occurs by the force of bhakti. And sometimes the suffering is Krishna's extra kindness, his special mercy, and sometimes it's the result of offenses that we've committed in our bhakti if we're not perfected. But the scriptures make it really clear: is the devotees, those who surrender to the Lord, they don't suffer because of karma anymore. They suffer and enjoy due to bhakti, and that's called Shobhana karma, or beautiful karma.
Shobhana karma?
Shobhana karma.
Shobhana karma.
And it may look like the same karma we were going to get. You may still get that tenure track job, or that endowed professorship at that prestigious university with the big fat paycheck and all the prestige that goes with it. Or something may happen and you may end up losing your job and your car, your truck, I guess. Isn't it your dog, your truck, your car? No, I guess the truck's the last thing. You lose your wife, you lose your house, you lose your dog, you lose your truck. It comes through Western songs. And if you play them backwards, then you get your truck back, you get your dog back, you get your house back, you get your wife back. So that, when that happens to surrendered souls, those things may still come.
Yeah.
Srila Prabhupada got gored by a bull in New Delhi, I think, not even in Vrindavan, I think in the city, if I remember correctly. And he had 2 heart attacks on the trip here on Jaladutta, and another one a year and a half later. And got sick, so sick in 1974, scared the bejesus out of us. We were doing 24-hour kirtans in the summer of 1974 because Srila Prabhupada had become so ill. And then at the end of his life, he became sick. So, these things, all the stuff, it might be it might even be the same stuff that would have happened anyway. But the devotees take this as some sort of decoration, some sort of ornament. It's a good question. We ask it all the time. We're never, the answer satisfies us intellectually for a couple of minutes, and next time we stub our toe, we think, what the heck? I thought I chanted 16 rounds today. Good one, though. Thank you. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam.